I want to welcome everybody in. We're Pupil of the Eye organization, and this is our Eat to Heal collaboration with KemetiCare with Dr. Hubbard, who you see right there on the screen. We got a small group tonight, but like my mom always told me, how you are with one person is how you'll be with 100. So we plan to deliver the same way we would as usual. And we want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And as we get started, I want to go over just a few guidelines just to help us navigate tonight's event efficiently. So our group is a judgment-free zone. Everyone's journey with food and healing is unique, and we're here to listen, share, and support one another with kindness and respect. Um, you know, we encourage participation. Everyone's voice matters, so let's create a space where everyone can share their thoughts and experiences. Please raise your hand in the chat if you have a thought you want to share, and we'll call on you when it's appropriate. And please stay muted while someone is presenting so we don't get a lot of background noise. We want to listen to understand. Truly hear what others or the presenter is saying and approach each conversation with curiosity and empathy. Value each contribution. Every story, tip, or idea shared adds to our collective wisdom. Appreciate everyone's input. And please state, when you share, please state whether your input is evidence-based, speculation, or opinion. This will help others make sound decisions in regards to their personal journey. Respect individual beliefs. We all come from different backgrounds and we have different perspectives. So let's honor those differences and focus on our common goals. We want to share with an open heart. Express your views honestly, but remain open to hearing others as well. And we want to focus on healing and not dividing, right? So avoid discussions about politics or religion that may distract from our purpose of healing through food and support. And then lastly, we want to stay humble and curious. Approach each of these conversations as a learning experiences. Be ready to grow and discover new ways to heal, and restore. Right. And so, just like I mentioned before, we're Pupil of the Eye organization. This is a collaboration. To learn more about us, you can log on to pupiloftheeye.net. We'll put that in the chat. And then to learn more about Dr. Hubbard and KemetiCare, you can log on to KemetiCare.com. We'll put that in the chat as well. So just very briefly, because I want to make sure we save the most amount of time for our Q&A at the end, I want to jump in and just share a little bit about what support groups are, what our support group is, and the benefit of being involved in a support group. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes, sir.
All right, so the benefit of being in a support group. Today we will explore some of those benefits, the educational resources available through our support group, and volunteer and recreational activities we participate in together. Being part of a support group, you gain a network of support, shared experience, and new opportunities to grow and heal. So one of the biggest benefits is increased resilience, all right? So I'll share a stat. According to St. John's Recovery Place, individuals struggling with addiction who join support groups reduce their chances of relapse by 7 to 25%. While many associate addiction with substance abuse, behavioral psychologists see it as any deeply rooted behavior or habit. This behavior may be in relation to food, gambling, or any other triggers. So in a support group, shared experiences help lift the weight of judgment and encourages openness leading to safer paths forward. You have enhanced goal achievement. Active participants and support groups improve the likelihood of reaching personal goals. Um, these groups, including ours, are diverse, bringing together people from various backgrounds. And in this space, your lived experience is is your credential that adds depth and understanding to each shared story. A sense of connection and community. Right. So research shows that 77% of support group members report an improved sense of community and connection. SAMHSA defines recovery as a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live self-directed lives, and strive to reach their full potential. Support groups provide a stable and safe environment where personal growth can flourish. So, personal development. Support groups offer a safe and consistent space to tackle challenges, leading to improved well-being, better communication skills, and stronger problem-solving abilities. By connecting with others, you gain insight into different coping strategies and build a network of peers to rely on. Every path to growth is unique, and you are responsible for finding what works best for you, right? And so, some of the educational benefits of being involved in our support group is we have health and nutritional presentations such as this one. We have our weekly Eat to Heal support group. It's held every Wednesday. We do peer review research data and recipes and meal prep techniques. So some of the volunteer opportunities that we have are soup kitchens, community expos, math tutoring, and organic farming through our collaboration with We Grow Well. And lastly, some of the fun activities that we have. Cooking demonstrations, meal preps, taste testing, potlucks, hyperbaric chamber therapy, cryotherapy, group workshops. So our group is an informal group. It's free to join. And just in case you're wondering where I got some of those stats from and that information, these are some of those sources. I encourage people to look at those for yourself and just gain more information and more so you have more to bring to different challenges that you face. Let me stop share. All right, so after Dr. Hubbard presents, we'll have a Q&A portion. So while he's speaking, feel free to put your questions in the chat. And after his presentation, Donna, she will raise her hand right there. You see who Donna is. She will read through those questions and we'll try and get as many of them answered as possible. And just like I'll reiterate what I mentioned in our guidelines, if something pops up, put it in the chat. But if it's urgent, raise your hand and we'll get to you when appropriate. Okay. So, Dr. Hubbard, welcome.
Ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. Let me share my screen here. All right, can everybody see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
All right, beautiful. Well, I'm excited for our second installment of Harvesting Health. I'm really excited. The first one went so well. We had a lot of great feedback, and some really good support strategies on how to ensure that we can create longevity with our efforts. And so I'm looking forward to another such discussion this evening. So tonight we're going to be focusing on gut health, digestion, and nutrition. So this will coincide with our last discussion, which was primarily on abnormal blood sugar regulation and how type 2 diabetes can rear its ugly head. It's becoming a big issue. Another really big issue is gut health. And the more that we learn about the microbiome, for those of you who may not be familiar with the microbiome, it is the ecosystem, the environment in our colon primarily that houses all of these different types of bacteria that have this symbiotic relationship with our system. And in many instances, provide a lot of neurochemicals, brain chemicals, enzymes, etc., molecules that the brain needs from the gut. They are transported to the brain. There's been a lot of really awesome research about the gut-brain axis and how if your gut is not healthy, then your thoughts and your mentality is not healthy, and vice versa. So there's so much to unpack there. I think we'll have multiple discussions. So I thought today would be a good opportunity to begin to scratch the surface a little bit about all of this gut health related, nutritionally related information. And let's jump right in. All right. So I think it's so important to have some perspective about our anatomy. And when you have a, a good foundation of your anatomy, it makes to better understand physiology and how that anatomy works together with each other. And then once you grasp those two concepts, then you can get into what we call pathophysiology, which is what happens when physiology goes wrong and disease develops. Right. So I'm sharing this with you because this is how I compartmentalize where things are, where organs are, and the relationship that these organs have to each other. And then later in the discussion, we'll unpack some of the common disease states that you probably already know a lot about, but hopefully our conversation tonight will shed a little bit more light and perspective about how those diseases develop in the first place, because that's what we're really passionate about in the KemetiCare mindset is circumventing disease with information, understanding, and innovation, right? How can we get in front of disease before it actually begins to develop in the first place? Okay. So let's just kind of go step by step through the GI system. And I'm going to step through this pretty quickly, but I think you'll pick up on what is really important because I want to, as Steve mentioned, the rubber really meets the road when questions are asked and answered. All right. So let's make our way through the presentation and then we can get to the Q&A. All right. So important, dentition. Let's start there. All right. Healthy teeth, being able to chew your food. And guys, that's something that most people misconstrue. Digestion doesn't begin in the stomach. Digestion begins in the mouth through the process of mastication or chewing. So the chewing process is supposed to involve these glands that you see here on the screen. All right. So underneath the tongue, we have sublingual glands that produce enzymes and provide saliva. The submandibular glands are lower beneath the jaw, and we have parotid glands on either side of the jaw. All right. So they're all going to provide enzymes, saliva, and the necessary environment for that digestive process to begin as you chew your food. All right. Specifically, there is salivary amylase. Okay. This is a enzyme designed to break down carbohydrates that's included in your saliva fluid. All right. So my grandma used to always chew, baby, chew, keep chewing. You're too hungry. You're eating too fast. And I was like, man, I'm ready to eat, man. I'm hungry. So this is a thing. Our sisters are the first doctors. They always had the right thing to say and the right understanding of household remedies and things like that. But I want to make sure that we drive that point home. Chewing your food is the beginning of the digestive process. And then when you swallow, it moves past the pharynx and into the esophagus. And there it traverses all the way down, past all of your cardiovascular organs, past the diaphragm and into the stomach. All right. And the stomach is where things really begin to take off because there's a different environment in the stomach. All right. The stomach has what we call stomach acid. This stomach acid is about a pH of 2. Okay. So 2 is a pretty strong acidic salicylic solution. Um, so this is where the food really goes from what we see it as we eat it and as we chew it to being broken down into its micronutrients. All right. So let's cover this really quickly. We'll go over this too on the next slide. But our major micronutrients: fructose, glucose, fatty acids, glycerols, and amino acids. All right. So carbohydrates, after they're broken down to their rawest form, they're in glucose and fructose. These are the micronutrients capable of absorbing into the bloodstream. You've got amino acids, which is the breakdown of protein, and you've got fatty acids and glycerol, which is the breakdown of fats. All right. So after these foods have been churned in the stomach, mixed with stomach acid, then they're going to enter into the first section of the small intestine called the duodenum or the duodenum, depending upon where you went to medical school. So this area is very valuable and important because it absorbs all of those carbohydrate micronutrients, protein micronutrients, and fat micronutrients. This is where you absorb your food. This is where the gallbladder comes into play. It secretes bile into the small intestine. The pancreas comes into play. It secretes all sorts of enzymes into the small intestine to further break down and absorb these micronutrients, right? And then along the way, and in the rest of your intestinal tract, your small intestinal tract, you're going to start absorbing these nutrients, okay? So your liver is there also. It's connected to the gallbladder. It produces bile and it helps to clean blood. Those are its main two sources and functionalities. All right. As I mentioned, the pancreas is a hormone producing organ, but it also is an enzyme producing organ. We talked about that last month. And then finally, we get into the small intestine. Like I said, this is where all your nutrients are absorbed. In your large intestine, this is where all of your water is absorbed. Okay. This is a key component of your colon function because if that water absorption ratio is not adequate, you will develop colonic issues, primarily constipation. That's the major issue where stagnated waste is not able to make its way through the colon and out through the rectum and the anus in your elimination process. All right. So the sigmoid colon is one that you want to take note of because that's where constipation happens most frequently because of the S-shaped motion of that section of the colon. It tends to get clogged up and you cannot properly eliminate. All right. So we've got a lot of great strategies and things to talk about as we continue, but that's the anatomy and physiology, or the anatomy with a little physiology. All right. It takes guts to be healthy, guys. Hippocrates told us a long time ago, all disease begins in the gut. I can't say that all disease begins in the gut, but a vast majority of disease begins in the gut with what you're putting in or not putting into your mouth. All right. So we can cruise through this slide pretty quickly because we already went over the micronutrient element and how and where those particular molecules are absorbed into the bloodstream. Again, it's so important to talk about this microbiome and having a healthy gut, all right? Lactobacillus is the primary bacteria. There's all different types and strains and things. These are what are the bacteria found in your probiotics. So this is why they're very important. Like I said, they have a symbiotic relationship, a help you help me relationship with our systems, right? If this whole process does not work, if you don't absorb nutrients into your bloodstream, you will eventually run into problems because the cells in your system are starving for these nutrients, and eventually they begin to misfunction and die. All right. And that's when you start to have aging, chronic illness, chronic disease states when your cells are not being properly nourished. All right. So let's just talk about some common symptoms, things that you see in the gut or things that are related to the gut, right? We talked about this constipation, guys. I can't express to you enough that constipation is a major, major problem, one that's sort of swept under the rug by traditional healthcare. They're not concerned about you defecating properly. And if you're not eliminating this waste, you run into auto intoxication. Auto intoxication is when you are not capable of, sorry about that, when you are not capable of properly eliminating those toxins and they begin to absorb back into the system and creating even more challenges, all right? We talked about stomach having a different pH than the rest of the system, okay? So GERD or gastroesophageal reflux, heartburn, is the result of you having stomach acid pushed up into the esophagus because the musculature between the stomach and the esophagus becomes weakened. All right. So this can create many, many, many different challenges or different levels of illness, all the way up to something we call Barrett's esophagus, where you develop ulcers in your esophagus, and you can also even develop esophageal cancer by having this process happen unregulated, right? Gallstones or cholecystitis. Cholecystitis is essentially inflammation of the gallbladder tissue. This happens for a multitude of different reasons, but primarily because a gallstone gets stuck because it's too big. It's housed in the gallbladder, and then the gallbladder is contracting, trying to add its bile substance into the small intestine for digestive purposes, and that gallstone gets stuck. All right, so that's a surgically for many people, they get a surgical procedure associated with that, and they likely will even have their gallbladder removed. Okay, inflammatory bowel disease is a whole host of different issues associated with the immune system. All right. Um, Really interesting. If you guys recall the Dave Chappelle skit, this was several years ago. He made a whole scene, a joke about the itis and how you can eat something and this creates the itis where you have issues with your gut, you feel tired, you feel lethargic, you need a nap, etc. This is very similar to what we're talking about. So things like ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, um, other things like irritable bowel, Crohn's, celiac, they don't have itis in it, but they're also directly associated with inflammatory issues in the bowel, okay, or in the gut itself. So celiac is a great discussion point that I want to bring awareness to. This is a gluten allergy. So gluten just became popular maybe about 5 or 7 years ago. A lot of people were saying that once they stopped eating gluten, that they had a reduction in a lot of their unhealthy gut habits or gut symptoms. So that's something to consider. Guys, there's a very high potential that you're allergic to something that you're eating. So I would take a moment, um, evaluate that. You don't necessarily need to go get an allergy test or go see a doctor or anything like that to determine whether or not you're allergic to something that you've eaten. There's a lot of easy tests to do right on yourself. If you have to go to the bathroom after you eat something, you're allergic. If you are not digesting it well after you eat it, there's a likelihood that you're allergic to it. If this does not agree with you and you always feel bloated and uncomfortable, these are examples of your body telling you that this is not well digested in my system. Now, that could be for a multitude of reasons. You could have an immune response to this particular food, or you could have mixed two foods that don't agree with each other or shouldn't go together. Um, or you could just have an abnormal gut biome. So there's a lot of things to unpack, but those are some of the common things you can take a look at to determine whether or not you're having some allergy issues to certain foods. And last but not least, there's a lot of people suffering in silence with hemorrhoids because they're not eliminating properly. They're eliminating in the wrong position and they're straining. So this is an outpocketing of vasculature around the anus and the lower portion of the rectum. And so these outpocketings of tissue can protrude and get infected, inflamed, et cetera. And obviously it doesn't get better because you have to keep eliminating. So this could be a chronic condition and something definitely need to be discussed, right? So common symptoms: abdominal pain, discomfort, any sort of flatulence or belching, gas, right? This is the body's attempt to digest what it is that's being eaten, but not having the best approach or not having the best success in doing so. If there's a big shift in your frequency, urgency, or the type, the consistency of your bowel movements, that is a sign, guys. That is something their body's telling you. If your skin is not looking very healthy, if your skin has hyperpigmentation or blemishes or any of the kind of autoimmune stuff like eczema, dermatitis, rashes, this is a reflection of your gut health. Your skin and your gut are uh they coexist. They work in harmony. So when one is clean, the other is clean. When one is healthy looking, the other is healthy looking. All right. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If there's something going on with your skin, there's something definitely going on with your gut as well. All right. A lot of people don't consider this, but your mood, your irritability, like the way that you interact socially, there's a lot of correlation between your mood and shifts in your mood and your gut health. All right. And that's also we commonly call brain fog, where you're just not focused, not clear, not facilitating healthy thoughts or operating at your peak. And most people drink caffeinated beverages or um, you know supplements or even pharmaceutical products to try to bring themselves into a working state of mind. And reality is that you're not going to be able to achieve that without those performance enhancing drugs until you get your gut healthy. All right. So that's important. All right, guys. I'm not gonna uh, I know this is a lot of information, and I just want to drive this point home. Your immune system lives in your gut. That's where all of your immune function is going to be focused on the majority of the time because we're eating several meals a day that require the filterization. So the liver and the immune system and the spleen are working diligently to make sure that no infection is getting into your system through your GI tract. Okay. Um, that's why typically if you do a cleanse of your colon and your GI system, your cold symptoms or your autoimmune symptoms or flu-like symptoms, whatever the case may be, will begin to improve themselves. So we could have a whole lecture on immune system function in the gut and how that impacts your day-to-day experience. But I just want you to take that with you. There's a direct correlation between your gut health and your immune system health. All right. Um, Extremely important. All right. So here's some hacks, guys. Here's some things that you can walk away from the discussion saying, hey, I can try that. That sounds easy enough. All right. Things that are fermented are good for your digestive health. Okay. Kimchi is really nice. It doesn't sound appealing, but it's actually pretty nice, especially if you use it in conjunction with a salad or a soup or something like that. It can give a really salty umami flavor to your meal. Kefir, not my personal choice, but it does have some really great fermented aspects and some healthy bacteria in it. Kefir is in the buttermilk family. It's got that kind of flavor to it. So you can add it to smoothies and things like that. If you're sensitive to dairy, it's probably not your best one. All right. Miso, like miso soup from your local Japanese restaurant. Miso soup can be really good. Again, a lot of those um, tart and umami flavors are going to be really powerful. Kombucha is obviously my favorite. I can You can have a kombucha beverage, and that can literally in one day kind of help you to reestablish your gut health and your gut biome. So those are a couple of really great things that you can add to meals or drink on a consistent basis. The second thing is we got to start defecating properly. And if you're not familiar with that, I really would encourage you guys to check out the Squatty Potty. All right. Squatty Potty was designed back in 2014 by a gastroenterologist who was seeing a lot of uptick in hemorrhoids. And he thought, wow, how can we fix this? Normally, guys, when you go to the outhouse years ago before John Crapper created the toilet, you would squat to eliminate, completely squat. And now you sit on a commode, right? So the seating position is more comfortable for you to sit there for long periods of time, but it is not the adequate angle for you to eliminate. And so what he's done is he's created this stool that goes around the toilet, and you put both feet on top of the stool, and it raises your feet about 9 inches off the ground so that your knees are above your hips. And that correlates to you having a better position to eliminate and not have to strain. So that's a really great thing that can help immediately. Third thing is, what time are we eating? All right. This comes from traditional Chinese medicine and the flow of chi energy through your meridians. This is what acupuncturists talk about and acupressurists talk about. So your stomach meridian is most active between 7 and 9 a.m. So it would behoove you to have your breakfast, something nutritious. If you're going to take your supplements, if you're going to take your medicines, if you're going to do anything from the digestive standpoint, it's good to have it between 7 and 9 in the morning. And then your small intestine meridian is most active from 1 to 3 p.m. So in theory, breakfast and lunch, but you want to start a little bit earlier, right? Because the digestive process won't actually start. So you don't want to eat at 9. You want to eat more at 7 so that between that 2 hour window, that's actually when the digestion is taking place. And same thing with the small intestine. All right. Because that's where, again, all of your micronutrients are going to be absorbed in the small intestine. So that's a great time for lunch. Not to say that you shouldn't eat other times of the day, but specifically during these times of the day, your body is ready to receive that energy. All right. So I put there that intermittent fasting is a really great way to ensure that your organs get a little bit of rest So many people identify with a 16-8 fast. Essentially, that would be you eating between the hours of 12 noon and 8 p.m. And then after that time, you do not consume, or during that window of time is the only time you consume actual food items. Outside of that window, you're just going to be consuming beverages. And people have really revolutionized their gut health with that, because those 16 hours are so valuable for your systems to realign themselves, rest, and be prepared to absorb nutrients the next day. All right. So let's do a case study. Guys, this is Reginald James. He's 43. He's the husband and a father of two daughters. He lives in Chicago. They got a 2-bedroom apartment. He's a truck driver, but he's got a logistics company that goes along with the trucking. He loves sports, Chicago style deep dish pizza, hip hop music, and movies. All right. Health issues, constantly going between diarrhea and constipation. He is starting to experience some changes in his blood sugar levels and developing insulin resistance. He's constantly fatigued, and certain foods drive him crazy. He's very sensitive to certain foods. From a wellness standpoint, he's not getting adequate nutrition. His diet is all over the place with him being on the road, improper sleep hygiene because he's on the road, and lots of stress because he's got two daughters to raise and a wife who loves nice things. All right. So, outcome, his gut health continued to decline to the point to where he could not drive the trucks and could not consistently be engaged at work because he was always back and forth to the restroom. So he decided he was going to make some significant changes to his lifestyle and to his diet. He began supplementing. He incorporated the intermittent fasting. He got a squatty potty, and he was very, very what's the right word? Considerate of what he was putting in his mouth and what he wasn't putting in his mouth. And he gradually began to recover his gut health. The big deal, I believe, in this particular case was him being able to um, consistently get his gut biome in order. He was suffering from something called leaky gut. Leaky gut, really quickly, is the intestine's inability to prevent food waste and bacteria that we eat to get in between the cells. All right. So if these cells are starting to spread from each other, normally they're connected very closely and they're absorbing all of the nutrients here. But if they start to separate at the base, food particles and bacteria get in there and it drives the immune system crazy. All right. The immune system is really active trying to get those small infections here and there under control. And it can really damage the lining of the intestine and prevent you from the process of digestion and nutrition. So that's what was happening with Mr. James. And he was able to gradually, slowly but surely recover from those things. And he's now in much better shape. So this is a happy story, happy ending. So KemetiCare is my organization. We've been serving the community diligently since 2014, but officially it's been registered as a business since 2017. So our whole focus, as I mentioned earlier in the discussion, is to align with organizations like Pupil of the Eye and other related organizations that are dedicated to making change in our communities primarily. And we do that through a couple of different angles, primarily through developing new ways in which people can take advantage of healthcare services, um, lectures, and disseminating health information like this Harvesting Health platform, data collection. We're always looking for the next thing. What is a way that we can get ahead in our health? And then we also offer health coaching and wellness plans and personalized strategies for how to achieve your goals. All right. So next steps, we're growing, expanding, and scaling the business. So we're looking for strategic partners. You've heard a couple of the relationships that have already been created here on this platform. Really are passionate about expanding all of the different efforts that we have and getting our mobile app and cloud-based telehealth network off the ground. All right, here's our contact information. Please get with us if you have any more specific questions or if we can provide any services for you. The easiest and best way is probably just to follow us on social media so you can keep track of us. We're in the process of rebuilding our website, but it's still there. But there's going to be a lot of great new things to come. So social is probably the easiest way to stay up with us. All right. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll be more than happy to entertain any questions that you have about the discussion tonight and or anything else that may be pertinent based upon our discussion.
Yeah. So, hey, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing all that information, Dr. Hubbard. And I think there's a lot of great talking points, and I'm curious and excited to hear some of the questions that we have. I will pass it over to Donna, and I just want to remind everyone if anything comes to mind, put your question in the chat, and Donna will facilitate those with Dr. Hubbard. And if for some reason something urgent comes up and you need to speak immediately, raise your hand in the chat, and Donna will call on you in the appropriate time at the appropriate time. All right. So thank you, Donna. It's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. All right. First question up is, what are some of the changes that you can make in your diet or eating habits that can correct constipation?
So the number one thing, guys, is water, 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 water. You have to drink sufficient amount of water. That's what's going to actually flush your system and help some of that stagnated waste to get moved. Second thing I would suggest is specific fiber, a heavier fiber diet if you're not already eating enough fiber. If you're not really big into fiber itself, you can use something called psyllium husk, which is a really great whole food supplement product. It actually naturally has butyric acid or butyrate. This is a small chain fatty acid that is really helpful in the leaky gut process that we were talking about earlier. So those are a couple of things that can really jumpstart you to kind of eliminate on a more consistent basis and not be jammed.
All right. Thank you. Number 2 question. Speaking of your fermentation, kombucha, how much kombucha daily is sufficient or adequate?
I mean, I think one of the standard kombucha bottles is sufficient. I don't think you need to have more than one unless there's a particular concern that you have and you're really trying to do something different. But typically you're supposed to introduce these bacteria into your system on a regular basis daily. And so the kombucha not only is good because of the fermented aspect, but also because it has a bacteria and yeast base that's going to help replenish your gut bacteria. So every time you eliminate, you lose some bacteria. A certain amount of bacteria are going to be fighting, right, for the environment. So you just want to make sure on a consistent basis you're putting more of the good soldiers in the bacteria battle into the system.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question. What psychological aids or things can you use when trying to convince someone to take the next necessary steps to change their health and their, gut health?
This is a touchy subject for me because I feel like I'm always trying to convince people to do stuff they don't want to do. So you have to take into consideration what's a motivating factor. What I have found that's been helpful in trying to help people make lifestyle changes that are difficult or challenging is that you have to make it bigger than them. You have to attach your health success to something else. So like, for example, you want to live a long, healthy life so you can play with your grandkids, right? You want to you have these goals and aspirations to travel here or travel there. Like, you want to make sure that you're in good shape to do that. Sometimes it can be challenging for people to make the correlation between what they eat and how their body feels and what sort of issues they may be having. So sometimes it's good just to give people some straight talk perspective. Hey, if you continue down this road, it's not going to end well for you. Dialysis, oxygen tank, whatever. In the gut health conversation, it's a colostomy bag, which does get people's attention if you explain it to them in that kind of way sometimes. I don't like to use the scare tactics, but quite frankly, they work sometimes with people who are not really giving their health the right sort of initiative.
Mhm. Thank you. Next question. Speaking of some of the helpful foods, we saw garlic on the wheel. So do we eat the garlic raw, or is it just increasing the use of garlic in your cooking?
I think if it's a healthy source of garlic, it's a healthy source of garlic. I'm a little bit skeptical now of some of the spices that are on the shelf. Are they completely 100% what it is they're supposed to be? Is there adder or filler in there or anything like that? So I tend to like to chop my own garlic myself so I can see the clove. But I know that's a tedious process, and it's easier just to pull out the garlic powder and shake it on something. But I would just be intentional about reading labels and making sure that I know what's going on and what I'm putting into my system. I had a mentor of mine tell me about this honey and garlic mixture, and not that I didn't believe him, but I didn't know how powerful it really is. But essentially, you can take raw garlic, you take all of the covering off of the garlic, and then you add it to a mason jar filled with raw honey, and you just let it sit. It needs to sit for a minimum of 3 months before you start consuming it. But once it's gone through that maturation process, it is like a powerful, powerful antibiotic or antimicrobial agent. And so you take a little bit by mouth every few days once it reaches maturity. So that's one thing you can do with the garlic if you rather not cook with it or chop it or those sorts of things. That's another good way to incorporate the healing benefits.
I can testify on that. I have a jar on my counter today. Through the fall and winter season, I keep it, and it's probably 8 months old. The garlic is fermented. It is local honey that I used in it. And like Dr. Hubbard said, you just fill your jar with fresh garlic cloves. You take your local honey and you fill it until you cover your garlic cloves. Seal that jar. You will have to, when you start it, kind of open that jar daily because it's fermenting. It developed gases, so you have to let those gases out and reseal it. But I haven't bought anything over the counter for colds, for flu, sniffles, anything. Next question, Dr. Hubbard, we've got someone that has issues with seborrhea dermatitis. She says it seems to flare up on her face when she's stressed, and it also seems to be triggered by some of the foods that she eats. She is asking what food should she start avoiding or taking out of her diet to remedy her seborrhea dermatitis?
Great question. And I think the immediate answer is you're going to have to do a little bit of trial and error. You're going to have to figure out, okay, I've had a flare up. What did I eat? and make note of that, and then take that out of your diet or minimize that in your diet. So it might take a little bit of trial and error, but that's what I would strategize. That's how I would go after it, versus going through allergy testing and all of that kind of stuff. I don't think it's ragweed or pollen or any of the things that they're looking for on your common allergy test. I think it's going to be a more of a nutritional deficiency or something that just doesn't agree with you, and your immune system gets angry when it gets around it.
Thank you. Next question, when we're talking about increase our consumption of water, can we count the water that we get from like tea, juices, coffee, etc.? And second part to that question is, what is an adequate amount daily to consume?
So I'm going to say that this needs to be raw water. I know there's so many different things that we add to it these days. I was talking to a lady a few weeks ago, and she puts Crystal Light in her water, and I was like, "You just ruined it. I mean, it's not water anymore. It's flavored water." But here's what I mean by that. If you drink tea, most teas, black, green to a certain degree, white, they're diuretics. So they're going to increase the amount of urine that you eliminate on a daily basis. If you are drinking juice is not hydrogen and oxygen. It has a completely different makeup. So those two things can't be put in the same category as water. Now, obviously, all water is not created equal. You got alkaline water, you got spring water, you got purified water, you got distilled water, you've got sink water, you've got all of these different things, okay? So we might need to have a whole nother discussion on water, but that's why I think a lot of us get in trouble is we're drinking a lot, but we're not consuming water. And also, there might be a lot of people who are drinking water, but they're not absorbing it because their salt to water ratio is out of balance. So you drink water, but your body is still not making room for that water to be absorbed, if that makes sense. And so just a little sea salt in the morning and in the evening can remedy that and help you to absorb that water. Also, the quality of water is going to make a big difference. Now, the formula that I really tell people about is 2/3 of your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you need 66 ounces. If you weigh 200 pounds, you need 122 ounces, right? Or 32 ounces. So that may sound like a lot. If that's a lot and that's hard for you to consume and get down, you can do half your body weight in ounces. But you need to be pushing towards that 2/3 because that means that your fluid retention is not present and you're actually going to be eliminating. And after a while, your body won't be constantly going to eliminate. It's going to find a balance with the amount of water that you're consuming. So if you're going 15, 20 times a day to the restroom at first, that's okay. But if that continues, that means your salt content is not sufficient. So that doesn't mean go get a bunch of Mortons and off the table. And no, that means some good sea salt or Celtic salt or Himalayan pink salt.
Kind of to piggyback off of our water and hydration, what about coconut water?
Absolutely. So those are our H320 type waters. So coconut, watermelon, those are not cucumber, those are not juices, right? They're completely different consistency. Their flavor, they taste good, but they're not like OJ or apple juice or grape juice. So those are really helpful as well. Absolutely. If you're not absorbing water really well, you can do coconut or watermelon instead. But that's gonna hit your pocketbook if you're drinking the amount.
All right, going back to kombucha, I have another question. Is the store-bought stuff we buy off the shelves, is that good for us?
I'm a label reader, right? I need to look at the back and make sure the ingredients are pure. I like this one called Synergy. Synergy is the brand. They've been around for a very long time. They've been regulated, they've been investigated, and they've stood the test of time. So I really like them. Kombucha now is a lot more popular than it was 10 or 12 years ago when I first found out about it. So that's one element. And like look on there, make sure there's no added sugar, make sure that there's no preservatives or additives or things in there. That's what I always look for if I'm trying a new product. And if you really about that life, you can make kombucha at home. They've got home kombucha kits now. I know a lot of people aren't too hot about paying $3.50, $4 per bottle. So I mean, it can get a little pricey if you're drinking it on a regular basis. So if you're in that boat, you can make your own flavors. They give you the entire kit and you have to ferment it for a couple of days and then it'll be ready to drink.
Thank you, thank you. Next question, is there a connection between our gut health and any particular cancers?
Well, yes. So we talked a little bit about Barrett's esophagus and stomach acid burning the lower end of your esophagus. That can lead to esophageal cancer. Obviously, if your certain foods have been found to be carcinogenic or cancer causing, hot dogs, bacon, processed sausage, and processed meats, those have been associated with things like stomach cancer. So just need to be careful with the consumption of some of these processed goods and the chemicals that are in them to keep them shelf stable, that kind of thing. Colon cancer is not as bad as breast or lung or, um, some of the other common types of cancers, but it's up there. It's maybe fourth or fifth on the list. And so that's why everybody's recommended to get a colonoscopy at 50 by the CDC just as a preventative measure. Um, I don't know. I haven't noticed that the numbers have gone down that dramatically since we've been doing mandatory colonoscopies, but um, that's one way to ensure that you don't have any polyps. And obviously there's rectal cancer. That one's pretty um, high up on the list, surprisingly, as well. So one thing I think is that everybody has cancer cells. You, me, everybody. It's whether or not they multiply and whether or not they have vasculature and all of the things that they need to grow and flourish and create problems, right? And so that's, I think, is the important thing to keep in mind is that if your guts are not being treated well, if they're bombarded with unhealthy food, the likelihood for there to be development of polyps and things like that goes up.
Thank you, thank you. I have a question about drinking alcohol. How does alcohol affect our health?
So, I mean, there's a couple of ways. Heavy alcohol, it tends to create challenges with our nervous system. And so the interesting thing, we didn't get into this in the lecture today, but the gut and all of the gut organs actually have more neurons, more brain cells than we do in our cranium. So some people in the Eastern world consider our gut to be our first brain. And you hear all of these comments like, I feel it in my gut, trust your gut. Where do those comments even come from? It's kind of interesting to unpack what may have been the thought process in previous generations, previous situations. But anyway, alcohol can mess with something called peristalsis. Peristalsis is that rhythmic moving of the large and small intestine to move things down the chute, also with your esophagus. So if your nerves are not functioning properly because you've you've depressed them with alcohol, then that could impact your ability to have a good bowel movement or to go through proper digestion. We talk about resveratrol. Resveratrol is the purple substance that comes from grapes that we have in wine. So a lot of people talk about how red wine is healthy for you and it has antioxidant principles. All of that's true. The amount of wine that you have to drink to get resveratrol in your system at an adequate amount is questionable. I think it's just all about moderation, guys. I mean, I think we can all agree a beverage or two of the alcoholic variety is not going to harm you, but it's more having it on a regular basis over the course of years or having a lot of alcohol in certain instances, right? You can really damage your brain plasticity and also the way that your nerves function with heavy alcohol consumption. That's why we pass out. That's why we black out. That's why we have inability of motor function. Is because our nervous system is really impaired trying to digest all of that alcohol. So.
Good evening, Karan. Thank you for joining us. Can I get you to mute your Zoom?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for here.
And you guys, thank you for all the wonderful questions. We've come to the conclusion of tonight's presentation, and I'm going to turn it back over to Stephen.
Hey, thank you, Donna, for facilitating that. I know it's not easy, but thank you very much. And I want to thank Dr. Hubbard too, and most importantly, I want to thank everybody for hopping on tonight. I also know it's not easy to start to evaluate yourself and address some areas in your life that might need more attention. I've gone through a lot of these processes on myself, and that's why I'm very passionate about this, and that's why I take the time. So before we hop off, I just want to remind everyone again that you can learn more about Pupil of the Eye and some of our initiatives by hopping onto our website, which is pupiloftheeye.net. That's PUPIL of the eye.net. And Dr. Hubbard, you can contact him through KemetiCare.com. And we encourage everybody to sign up for our blog on our website, as well as keep an eye out for our podcast that's in production. And we will send out a brief survey with just a few questions to everyone who attended via email. And we look forward to hearing your feedback just so we can learn how to make each experience a little bit more helpful so we get more out of it each time. So I thank everyone again, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the future. And hold on, we got something from Gwen. You're on mute, Gwen.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody, once you register, you should be able to not have to register again. So, but we want you to remember that this particular Zoom is once a month on the first Wednesday of each month. So please, we'll try to send out reminders to all of you that attend. Please invite others to join this if it made any sense to you guys tonight. Please ask your family, your friends, no matter where they are, to please join us. We also have a regular Eat to Heal Zoom every Wednesday, the last 3 Wednesdays of the month, unless there's a holiday. And so we'd like to, if you're interested in joining us for our weekly Zoom on Wednesdays, please do. I know that, I believe on the 18th, Dr. Jenkins, who is heavy into fasting, he's going to be speaking. I'm not exactly sure his subject, but I know that's one of his primary focuses. So please, if you're interested in the weekly Zoom, please let us know and we can connect you. So thank you guys for being here. And that's a different Zoom link too, to come to our other Eat to Heal. So thank you all for being here. Nia, it was wonderful seeing you, and Karen, it's wonderful seeing you. I know you're new to it, and my cousin Gwen is here. So we're happy to have all of you guys and our regulars that are regular here. So we'll see you guys next week, hopefully on next Wednesday.
And Nia, we'll send you the link for the Wednesday night Zoom.
And look like Tom has something really quick.
Yes, just clarification on the January 1st is the first Wednesday. So Dr. Hubbard's program will be the second one, which would be January, wait a minute. I'm looking at my January 8th,
Yes.
2025. And Dr. Hubbard, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
I really look forward to what we can do with it. I took a lot of notes, and I'm anxious to get working on improving my health. Thank you.
Of course, I'm glad to be a source.
All right, guys, you guys are wonderful. Hopefully see you guys on next Wednesday, but if not, if I don't see you, have a great holiday. Oh, and look out for our Kwanzaa activities too.
All right. Good night.
All right, guys, have a great night.
Good
Okay,
night.
good night.
Love you all.
Love
Thanks,
you.
everyone.